I just made this whole video and no sound recorded for it. So I figured I'd give you a little narration with it. Look, it's Blick art materials. I'm doing a box opening of art supplies. How exciting, huh? Look how excited I am. I'm really excited. Oh, there you go. I'm telling you about my big drawings I was doing. So I had to get more big paper because I ran myself out of big paper. I think I've done 20 of those drawings in the last 3 months. So that was my 20 sheets of big paper. All right, let's see what I got in this box. It's mostly supplies for making big drawings. There we go. We got air. Back packets of air, always good. Oh, packing slips. Turns out one was a packing slip and one was a receipt. I just looked at it a few minutes ago. What else do I have in the box? Tape. This is white artist's paper tape. Oh, I'm reaching for my old one so you can see how, look at that. Big, little, big, little. Oh, it's just like masking tape, only there's less tack to it. So when you tape it up on things, it doesn't rip the paper. And I'm a little persnickety with my tape too. See me trying to pull the edge off here? I always cut my tape with scissors because I like a sharp edge for pulling off the tape. Sometimes I tear up the tape by hand after I get it off the roll, but I always cut it off the roll with scissors. Let me see, I'm going to go over and show you my scissors in a minute. Look, scissors gesture, that's always good. If you're talking about scissors, you should make scissors gestures with your fingers. Otherwise, people might not. Oh, there's me doing tearing up gestures. So I'm a little behind on my narration. Hold on, I'm going to reach over for the tape for the scissors in a minute. I know. Oh, here you go. Demonstration. I got one pair of scissors for cutting paper. And I got another pair of scissors just for cutting tape. Because the tape cutting scissors get glue all over them. See that? I'm rubbing my fingers along the edge to show you how sticky they are. You gotta clean those every now and then. When you're trying to cut your regular paper with sticky scissors, you don't want that. Okay, let's get back to the box opening here. What do we got? What's our first thing? Ooh, Dick Blick Black Ink. That's the house brand from Dick Blick. It's called Black Cat. It's waterproof black ink. And that stuff is impossible to shake up when it's full. Here I am explaining the intricacies of ink. Ink is very often too watery or too thick. And when I first got this black ink, here's my, here's the old one that's almost done. When I first got this ink, it was too watery. But after I used it for a couple of months, some of the water from it evaporated. Here I am explaining more viscous inkness. So eventually, I liked the Blick Black ink. Eventually, it got to just the right consistency, which, not all inks do, but this one did. So as you can see, there's just a little bit in there, and I'm going to pour a bunch from the full one into the nearly empty one so that I can shake it up better. There's probably a lot of pigment at the bottom of that new one because, now I'm showing you how much of the ink I had to use before it got good. So about a quarter of the bottle I had to use up, and it was too watery. But then after it sat there, after that quarter of the bottle was there and was exposed to air in the top, the ink got thicker and better. Okay. Do I have more ink here? Because I know I got another bottle of ink. There we go. Oh, there's the one that's wrapped up in bubble wrap. This is the Sennelier acrylic black India ink. I think it's French with the name Sennlier. I had a hard time unwrapping it here because it was wrapped up. Now, matter of fact, it almost slipped out. Unwrap, 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 unwrap. Too much unwrapping, but you know how it goes. Sometimes it's just a ton of unwrapping. And this is actually I'll show, you'll see in a few minutes. Last year, the year before, I think it was, I bought the big bottle of ink. And this one, I got the slightly smaller one. What is this, a pint? A half pint? I can't remember. But this This bottle of ink was like it's more expensive than the Black Cat. I think this was about the same price as the Black Cat, which is around $15. And this is my favorite ink just because it's so rich and thick and black. But sometimes it gets too thick. But that's not... Too thick is easier to deal with than too thin, because too thick, you can add a little water to it. Too thin, well, some people actually boil their ink to make it thicker. I've heard of that. But usually I just let mine evaporate off. Here we go. There's the old bottle. That one right there, I think that's a pint, right? Or a quart? That one's the big one's like $35. So I didn't have $35 to spend this time around, so I went with a little bottle. That'll last me a while. And here I think I'm just about to spill ink all over my hand. Hold on. Okay, now I'm recounting the story about the first time I got this Sennelier ink. And I bought it in the dead of winter. I think it was a January, one of those really cold Januaries where it gets down to 8 degrees, one of those cold snap weeks. And I ordered the ink, and I guess it was sitting outside for so long on the trucks or whatever that ice crystals formed on the top and broke the plastic cap on the top of the bottle. The ink actually, when I got the ink, the cap was shattered and off the bottle, and the ink was frozen solid. If the ink wasn't frozen solid, it would have been all over the place. But luckily, I was still able to use the ink. I just taped up the cap, let the ink thaw out, and it was fine. But man, watch out when you're here I go. I got to show you this. I show you how I put the ink in these little bottles, but I don't know the cap isn't on all the way. So I show you the lid, and guess what? Ink goes all over my hand. Right there. I got to go get a rag here, because look at that. All over my hand. I tipped that bottle up to show you the cap, and there wasn't a good seal on the cap, because sometimes when you're using ink in the bottle and you're rubbing it on the top of the cap, on the top of the neck of the ink bottle, it makes it so the cap doesn't close 100% tightly. And that's what happened here. So when I tipped it over, I got ink all over my hand. And this is why you keep rags around for just such an occasion. And luckily, I didn't get it the ink all over my bright green shirt. I only got it on the floor, which was on my black mat on the floor, and a little bit on my drafting chair. But that's the nature of drafting chairs. Sometimes you get ink on them. So there you go. I put that ink away. I dry off my hand. Let's see what else is in that box. What do I have? More ink. Now this is ink for Copic markers. That's the black ink that I use. I use that ink to refill my black Copic marker, which I use on the drawings behind me. And here I go. I'm showing off the Copic marker, too. I got a new Copic marker because my old one was wearing out. Now, you can replace the tips on these Copic markers. Oh, look at that. I'm checking my shirt. No ink on it. You can replace the tips on these Copic markers, but sometimes the barrels are just plastic. So taking the lids on and off over time, there I am showing you how to refill the markers, but taking the lids on and off over time breaks down the plastic on the lid and starts to crack. And once you don't have an airtight seal, the marker's done for. Love those. What am I? I'm just talking about ink and markers, I think. I don't even know what I'm saying. I obviously had more to say about them then than I do now. Oh, now I'm showing you. See, there's one side. That's the tip. That's the fine point. And that's the chisel point. And both those points are replaceable. You can pull them out and put new ones in. So you don't have to throw out your markers once the tip wears down. Here I go. I'm showing you the straight edge. When you draw the marker along the straight edge, it kind of tears up the felt tip. So, 1 or 2 times doesn't do anything, but 100 times, and you've torn up your felt tip, so it's not the same shape anymore. So you got to replace that felt tip. And there we go. I'm showing you. I had to tape that cap because the cap had started to crack along the edge, and it was still good, but you see, I can still pull it off. But Without that tape there, it wouldn't be airtight anymore. See, there's a crack showing. There's a crack. We don't want cracks in our marker tips, because I found these Copic markers, though the tips and everything are replaceable, they only last 3 to 4 years in general before the caps wear out. And here's one that's broken and worn out. Watch how this twists. There's the brush tip. There's the chisel tip, and you can pull this. I think I attempt to pull the chisel tip right off. It's a completely dry marker because it's not airtight anymore. Look at that. Oh, it's stuck in there. Pull that right off, replace that, or put ink in there. Close it up. And this is how you can tell your marker is done for. Watch this. You wiggle it. You can see the seam of the marker top wiggle. You shouldn't be able to wiggle your cap like that. When you can, means it's done for. And both sides of this cap are done for. So that means I had to replace that. I have about a dozen markers I have to replace out of my set, but haven't been able to replace them all yet. But that's after 3-4 years. Some are duds to begin with. Ink on my hand. There we go.